Today should be, if you're on here on the right day, is Wednesday, April 15th. I am down here in our math section to give you a little refresher on equivalent fractions in simplest form. So at this point, if you're watching this video, you should have already cut out the vocabulary cards from this chapter and put them somewhere safe. I'm suggesting to you guys and the third graders to put your flashcards in your learning log or put them in an envelope and keep them in a safe spot with the rest of your school stuff so that you can refer back to them if you need them. So the vocabulary cards I'm talking about are these ones. I know that my page numbers here are wrong. So they are these vocabulary flashcards in the beginning of chapter 8 in your book. So I want you to cut all of these out, including this page also. And you'll notice that on the back of each of them is a definition as well as a little activity. The activity is optional, but cutting out the flashcards is important. So you should have done that already. And then here you are to watch my video of equivalent fractions in simplest form. So after this, you're going to need to get out your IXL packet, the same packet you used yesterday, and do page 4. It's called equivalent fractions. Then bring those questions to our Zoom meeting tomorrow. Okay? So really quick, we're going to go over both of those skills. And then if you have any other questions, you can bring them to Zoom tomorrow. So looking at our math book online, I pulled up the definitions that our math book uses for both equivalent fractions and simplest form. Our math book says equivalent fractions are fractions that represent the same number, meaning that in this example, 3/4 is equivalent to 6/8. Okay, we're going to talk about how they got this in just a second. So they have 3/4, and they said, what fraction is equivalent to 3/4? Okay, so I think that I can find any equivalent fraction, and I know that I can because I can multiply the numerator, the top number. Sorry, I'm not sure why this is blurry. I can multiply my numerator by my denominator by the same number and get an equivalent fraction. So for 3/4, what they did was they multiplied the numerator by 2 and the denominator by 2, and you just multiply straight across. 3 times 2 is 6, and 4 times 2 is 8. Sorry, guys, I don't know why it keeps blurring out like that. Okay, so you pick any number and multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the same number, and you get an equivalent fraction. So I could say here 3/4 is equivalent to 6/8. But 3/4 is also equivalent to what if I wanted to multiply by 5? I can do that so long as I multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. And then I multiply straight across. 3 times 5 is 15. And 4 times 5 is 20. So 3/4 is equivalent to 6/8, and 3/4 is also equivalent to 15/20. It doesn't matter as long as I multiply by the same number, the numerator and the denominator. I can also divide to find equivalent fractions. If my number is really big, let's pretend my numbers were 10/20. And I wanted to find a fraction that was equivalent to 10/20 by dividing. The only rule here, there's two. The first one is that you have to divide the same number to both the numerator and the denominator. So the rules with division are not all numbers are divisible by the same thing. So I have to think of a number that is divisible or can divide into 10 evenly and can divide into 20 evenly. So I know a safe one here for me is because both of these end in 0. I know that they're even and I can divide by 2. So I'm going to divide by 2 to both the numerator and the denominator. And then just like I did up here, except instead of multiplying, I'm dividing, I'm going to go straight across. So 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 20 divided by 2 is 10. Okay, so 10/20 is equivalent to 5/10, and I could do that with division. As long as you do the same to the top that you did to the bottom, you're good to go. Okay, so I even wrote that note up here. Multiply or divide by the same number to both the numerator and the denominator. So that's equivalent fractions. The other one that we're going to talk about is simplest form. Now, simplest form has a little extra step to it. So when a question asks me to put a number in simplest form, my first step is that I always have to list the factors of both my numerator and my denominator. There it goes. Okay, sorry about that. So if I picked a number like, let's see, how about 8? No, how about 6/8? Okay, so if I was asked to put 6/8 into simplest form, I would need to first find all of the factors of 6 and then all of the factors of 8. So the way that we were doing that in class was we drew a little arrow from the numerator, and I thought to myself, well, I need to list all of the factors, all of the numbers that multiply together to make 6. So I always start with 1, and you guys might remember this. I always start with 1, and 1 times what is 6? Well, 1 times 6 is 6. And do you guys remember that I put a big gap in between these so that they were in order by the time I was done from least to greatest? Okay, so 1 times 6 is 6. Now I think to myself, is there a 2 times that gets me to 6? Well, 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, and I think that's it, because if I don't have any other numbers, I have 1, 2, 3, and I know 4 is not one of them and 5 is not one of them. So here are all of the numbers that multiply together to make 6. 1, 2, 3, and 6. Okay, now with 8, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start with 1, because 1 times 8 is 8. Now I'm going to think 2 times what is 8? 2 times 4 is 8. Is there a 3 times? Nope. 4 times I already have. Anything 5 times something gets 8? No. 6? No. 7? No. And I already have 8. And that's as big as it's going to get, is the number itself. So now I'm going to look for common factors. Factors that both my numerator and denominator have in common. So they both have a 1. They both have a 2. They both don't have a 3, a 4, a 6, or an 8. So these are not common factors. These ones are. My job is to use the greatest common factor to divide. So looking at these two numbers, I have to choose between 1 and 2. Which of those is the greatest? Well, 2. So now to find the simplest form, I'm going to rewrite 6/8, and I'm going to divide both my numerator and denominator by my greatest common factor, which is 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. And so 6/8 is equivalent to 3/4. Now, I know that I'm done, and I should always check to make sure. I know that a number is in simplest form if the only factors that both of these numbers have in common is 1. Okay, so let's check. If I wanted to list the factors of 3, I would say 1 and 3. I can't think of any other numbers that multiply together to make 3 besides 1 and 3. With 4, I can multiply 1 times 4, and I can multiply 2 times 2. So the factors of 3 are 1 and 3. The factors of 4 are 1, 2, and 4. And so their only common factor is 1. That's the only number that they both have, the only factor that they share in common. So I know that 3/4 is in simplest form when the only factor that these two numbers have in common is 1. Okay, we'll do one more. Let's put, how about 12/18, a little bit bigger of a number, into simplest form. So my first step, if you remember, is to list all of the factors of 12, and then all of the factors of 18. So I'm going to start with 1. 1 times 12 is 12. Then I think, is there a 2 times? Yep. 2 times 6 is 12. Then is there a 3 times? Yep. 3 times 4 is 12. Okay, and then I don't have a 5, but I already have a 6, no 7, no 8, no 9, no 10, no 11, but I have my 12, so I'm done. Okay, now with 18, same thing. 1 times 18 is 18. 2 times 9 is 18. 3 times 6 is 18. Is there a 4? Nope. 5? Nope. I already have my 6, no 7, no 8, 9, and then there's going to be nothing else in between there. I would have already written it down. Okay, so now I'm going to look at these 2 sets of numbers and find the common factors. So I see that they have 1 in common, they have 2 in common, they have 3 in common, they don't have a 4, they both don't have a 9, they both don't have an 18, they both don't have a 12, but they both have a 6. So looking at these factors, 1, 2, 3, and 6, I have to pick the greatest common factor to divide both my numerator and my denominator by. And I see that that is 6, is the biggest number I have. So I'm going to rewrite the question, 12/18, and I'm going to divide both my numerator and my denominator by 6. 12 divided by 6 is 2. 18 divided by 6 is 3. So the equivalent fraction in simplest form is 2/3. And I can check my work by making sure that the only other factors that they have in common is 1. So the factors of 2 are 1 and 2. The factors of 3 are 1 and 3. There are no other numbers that multiply together to make 2 or to make 3 besides 1 and 2 and 1 and 3. So their greatest common factor is 1, which means this is in simplest form. Okay, your job now is to go on your IXL packet and do page 4 called equivalent fractions. It looks like this. So you'll want to find this page in your IXL packet, the same one as yesterday. Find page 4 and complete equivalent fractions. If you need extra or you have some extra time, you can go on IXL 4th grade math, P1 through P3, P5, P7, and P11. So I hope that helps you, and I will see you tomorrow at 9:30 for our Zoom session.